Andrew MacAskill.
How you doing?
Yeah, good. You?
Very good.
Mate, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast. I know how busy you are. I know how much of how much you got going on. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to come and talk to me.
Thanks for inviting me.
No
I
problem.
wouldn't have guessed 30 years ago you and I would be sat in this nice studio having this discussion today.
No,
So
definitely not.
Kind of surreal, but I'm really pleased to be here, mate. Thanks for having me.
No worries. Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, me and Andy, it feels weird calling you Andy because I've always known you as CAC, but for the podcast, I call you Andy. Me and Andy went to school together, and we spent the best part of 6 years entwined, getting into trouble, messing around, and it's just been a great journey. It's been brilliant to sit back and watch you flourish from there. I'm still a little bit bitter about you winning Funniest of the Year group. I came close second, if you remember.
We were
rightly.
number one, number two for that, weren't we?
Yeah.
You've just put a lot of pressure on the podcast to be funny, though.
Yeah, I know. Sorry about that.
I'm not sure we could have made that work, but I think we were. It's funny looking back, but I think we were both kind of the jokers.
Yeah, definitely.
To some extent.
Yeah, I was probably a little bit too much. I think quite a few. You were quite clever with yours because you came out of school with quite reasonable results, whereas I was just more focused on being the joker and still only came second funniest. So you obviously got it right.
Just about.
Nice. Okay, so we're going to start the podcast in the same way every time because I like to keep consistency. I like to get different answers and can kind of compare how different people discuss the question. And the first question I'm going to ask you is what do you deem as success? And by that, everybody's kind of journey for success is different. And I'm really interested to hear when do you sit back and think, yeah, I'm happy with that? Do you know what I mean?
I do, yeah. And I think I've been very lucky, as you said in the intro, to have had a lot of exposure to other people that are also trying to seek success in their careers, a lot of career coaching, that type of thing. And I think my view of what success is has changed hugely over the last few years because I've met lots of people that have achieved traditional success, but are unhappy people.
Yeah.
So for me, I try and simplify things as much as possible. That helps me understand it most of all, but also when you're trying to communicate with other people. And to put success into a sentence, I think success is aligning who you are with what you're doing.
Interesting.
If you're aligning who you are with what you're doing, both in the moment but on an ongoing basis, that's where fulfillment is going to come from. And it's important that we chase fulfillment rather than just achievement. I think that's an important nuance as well. But yeah, who you are with what you're doing. If you're doing that, in my eyes, you're successful. Yeah,
that's really interesting because it's quite, growing up, we look at people with nice cars, we look at people with nice watches, we look at people with nice houses, and it feels like that is the end goal. And I think probably an age thing, but I'm starting to realise that actually, I know a lot of people that are extremely wealthy that don't have to worry about money at all. Are they happy? Are they truly, truly happy? Can they, apart from the kind of exterior, are they actually, fulfilled in life and feel like they are, they can honestly look themselves in the mirror and tell, say that they're happy. So I think that's a really interesting point. With regards to aligning those two things that you mentioned, like what do you do to kind of get there? Like what's your kind of strategy for that?
Yeah, so I think the first thing, mate, is to do a lot of self-discovery work to work out who you are, because you can't align who you are with what you're doing if you don't know who you are in the first place. And that's about finding who you really are rather than the you that you've built up over time to work in different situations.
Yeah.
We're both a bit like that. It's part of the comedy thing, right? Like, so we're kind of chameleons to some extent.
I agree.
Yeah? Like you and I could drop into the boardroom of a corporate office and put that on, play that game if we need to.
Yeah.
Equally, we could be down the local roughest boozer in Southampton, with whoever.
In about 3 hours?
Yeah, I look forward to it. And we can play that game too.
Yeah.
And that's actually a really good superpower, to have that chameleon ability. I think it's good testament to our parents, who are quite salt of the earth people, in that they've taught us to be able to respect and get on with everyone regardless of level. That's a superpower. But the challenge within all of that is that sometimes you end up with a multitude of different masks that you use in different scenarios. And so I kind of, definitely when I look back at my 20s, I think that I had a work Andrew MacAskill. I had a mate's Macca or Cac.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a different guy. I was somebody else for Zoe in my relationship, like a different type of version of me. In some of the London friendship groups, I was playing up to a totally different character. And I think what happens over time is, like, you can get further and further away from actually understanding who are you, what do you really care about.
Yeah.
And the great thing about your 40s, where both you and I are now, is that, you know, you kind of get that self-awareness. And I just wish I'd have had that self-awareness earlier and could have let go of the judgment of others or doing things or being who other people wanted me to be.
Yeah.
Even your parents. Like, the first job I took was an accountant. Entire reason was because I knew that would make my mum and dad proud. To say, he's an accountant. Good.
Yeah.
Tick. Hated it. Did it 4 years, right? I mean, got a wife and a few mates out of it, so it wasn't a complete waste of time. And I still use those numbers and that business language today. But you understand what I'm saying? Like, we make way too many decisions based on the perception of others, but rather than using our own internal compass. Very long way of answering your question, mate. But the point being, in order to align who you are with what you're doing, the hardest part of that is understanding who you are.
Yeah.
And doing self-reflection exercises around, like, you know, what do I tend to be doing when I feel like a state of flow? Or what do I tend to be doing where, you know, time moves really, really quickly? Or, you know, the best ever week I had at work, what was unique about that week? What particular projects were I doing? Who was I collaborating with? What was it? You got to be self-reflecting all the time to identify patterns as to your own superpowers, what you care about, who you are. Then once you've got that, you've got to look for channels whereby you can spend most of your time. You can never spend all your time doing it, unfortunately. There's always crap that none of us want to do. But you're spending more and more of your time aligning to those superpowers and those things that bring you energy. I think that's the game.
Yeah. Do you think it's a conscious decision to find out who you are? Or do you think it's a natural progression as you get older? Like, you start to understand who you are more?
It's a very good question, isn't it? I think you just start to realise you're miserable and you don't really know why. And it's the pain of, like they say about any change, don't they? That, you know, the pain of staying the same has to be worse than the pain of change for the change to happen.
Yeah.
And I think you get to a point where you have a bit of an identity crisis. You feel a bit lost. You don't feel good. Some people obviously might get depressed at that stage or whatever it might be. But yeah, I think you just get to a point where you're like, this isn't lining up. I know that life's not a bed of roses, but I just don't feel great about the day to day. I'm getting the Monday dreads about going into work. Yeah, or the Sunday anxiety about going into that job. I don't feel as connected to what I'm doing. I'm clock watching. I'm bullshitting. You know, I'm taking sickies when I shouldn't be. I'm staying logged in but watching Netflix whilst my laptop's on. Like, most people listening to this would have done that sort of thing at some point. Yeah. And that feels horrendous because only you know about that, but you know. Yeah. And that's the hardest thing, isn't it? It's like, I know the level of loser and twat I'm capable of being. Yeah. Nobody else does, but I know, and I have to live with that. And so I think it's the self-discovery piece is all around kind of getting to a point where you recognise that you're not aligned with who you are, and then starting to actually put, you know, significant strategies in place to lean into who you know you want to be and what really lights you up. Yeah.
I mean, one of the best pieces of advice I ever had, going through a similar story to what you've just explained, someone said to me once, imagine your kids are watching and understanding everything you do. And you know what I mean? Like, you think, that's a really, so, you know, when I'm in the pub and I'm sneaking out the back door for a sneaky cigarette.
Act like they're in the room.
Act like they're in the room. And then you don't do that because you want to set a good example all the time.
Yeah. 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 And for me, that's probably been one of the best things about being a dad. Yeah. Is that the level of, like, the level of wanting to be a role model and the level of conscience that gives you in those situations. I think that's brilliant advice.
Yeah. And I think for me, that's what's kind of powered me on, really, because, you know, when I think about why I do what I do, well, it's to make my kids proud of me.
Yeah.
Genuinely, like that is it. You know, that's all. I want them to look at me, and I want them to be inspired.
Yeah.
You know, and you know that's the reason that I push myself and get myself out of my comfort zone, because that's what I'm. Do you know what I mean? So that advice was really powerful to me, and I was able to kind of go, yeah, that's going to make me a better person. You know.
And how do you remind yourself of that at the time when you need it?
It's difficult because a lot of the time, you know, when you're, you know, if we're out and alcohol's involved,
Yeah.
you kind of lose that.
Yeah.
You kind of lose that a
Mask
little bit.
slips.
But
Yeah.
it's also a little bit like, you know, it's also a little bit self-reflection in that perspective. But I can give you examples when I've woken up in the morning and I've planned to go on a run, you know, and I've woken up and really I ain't going. I ain't going. It's raining. It's cold. I'm tired. It's a Sunday. I don't have to get up. I don't need to be getting up at 6 a.m. to go for a run. And then I go through this thing. Imagine having this conversation. How would I explain this to my daughter? Why didn't you not go for a run this morning, Daddy? Because I'm lazy. Because it's cold. All the same reasons that I tell you you've got to get out of bed and go to school for, I've just stayed in bed and not gone out on my run. Do you know what I mean? And that's how I kind of...
Yeah, you don't want to be a hypocrite.
Exactly.
Very powerful. That's
Yeah.
a really, really good tip. I'm going to reflect on that. Even, I guess, as well, you know, like I have like most dads, I have my family as my screensaver on the phone.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, you know, even in those moments, even if you then looked at your phone.
Yeah.
Or you had some kind of visual trigger that was like, bang, and that could snap you out of the comfort zone. And
Yeah.
wanting to, particularly this time of year with the running.
So true.
Oh God, I can't tell you how many times I've pressed snooze and rolled under that nice comfy,
Honestly,
that nice comfy quilt these last month. It's been really tough.
But the problem is if you had somebody next to you going, "Cack, get out of bed, come on, we're going," you know, the chances are you'd get out of bed and
Yeah,
you'd go
for sure,
and you'd
for
enjoy
sure.
it. But the fact is you haven't got that. So,
No.
you know, it's the easy option is to just hit snooze, go back to sleep,
manana.
run tomorrow.
But the best thing about when you do it is not just the exercise or the mental benefits that we were talking about earlier. It's that you start to trust yourself again.
Yep.
That's the best thing. It's that self-reinforcement of trusting that, starting to trust your inner voice again.
It's like a confidence thing, isn't it?
It
Almost
is.
like an inner confidence. I've ticked that box. I'm a runner.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's not like I run. It's like, oh, I'm now a runner because I've done it.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're like, oh, I like to run, then that doesn't, you know, you're kind of in that mindset of, oh, I like to run, but if I don't really want to, I don't have to. And then it's kind of like, I've just run. So it's that kind of tick of, okay, now I'm a runner. So you've got that mindset of, right, I must run. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, it is, yeah, totally, really powerful.
Yeah, so it becomes part of your identity. What I think is interesting as well is that you can have... So discipline's something I think about a lot because it's not something that comes naturally to me.
No, same.
Well, I think our school careers pretty much confirm that. Pretty much every report. We should have brought our school reports.
Oh, God.
That would have been funny to read out now, wouldn't
It
it?
would have
There's
been.
some absolute belters in there. Anyway, let's not go down that rabbit hole. But discipline, I struggle with, so I think about that a lot. But I have discipline in certain areas. So, you know, from a marketing point of view over the last 5 years and a social media point of view over the last 5 years, there's loads of people that want to build personal brands
Yeah.
and don't get immediate payoffs or don't get what they're wanting or get a bit of abuse or get trolled and recline.
Yeah.
For some reason, in that particular area, I've been able to I was doing it before anybody was doing it, stuck with it, went through the growth barrier, and over a 6-7 year period, have built something that's I'm proud of and is also of value and delivers value to me and others.
Yeah.
So I know I have
You've got it.
discipline, but then running, for example, I'm 3 months on, 9 months off on the average year, I reckon.
Yeah. I can totally agree with that. I'm exactly the same. I think it's quite interesting, isn't it? Because I always deem myself as a non-disciplined person. I always think discipline's the area that I really need to focus on the most. I've always been a little bit unorganised. And I'll always set a plan out and not really stick to it. But like you say, in certain situations, I can be highly disciplined. I think it comes from a passion, though. I think if you're passionate about something, you're definitely more disciplined, and it's almost not discipline because, you want to do it.
You're getting pulled towards it.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. And maybe because I'm not passionate about running, then that's doomed to fail. And actually, playing five-a-side 3 times a week might be the way for me to get my cardio and steps.
Yeah.
Because I never struggled to turn up to Monday night five-a-side to catch up with the guys and have a kick around. I loved it.
Yeah.
Frustrating at times these days, but I definitely loved it. So yeah, interesting.
Yeah, cool. All right, well let's go back to the start. Let's go back to how you kind of grew up, what your upbringing was like, how the things that you did and the things that you were taught as you grew up led you to where you are now. Can you take us back?
Yeah, so much to your disgust, I was born in Pompey.
Oh,
I know.
I remember.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. So received a lot of affection from you over the years for that fact. But yeah, so I was born in Pompey. Very, very fortunate upbringing, I would say. My dad was one of 6 who grew up in a 2-bed in a big council area in Pompey. He's from Scotland originally, but moved down. My mum was one of 4 in a more middle-class background, I would say. And we started from pretty humble beginnings, but my dad was a real grafter. So I was just lucky that out of everybody from that background that I happened to be born to him. And I think my mum obviously played a key role in helping push him along like they do.
Yeah.
So he was one of those kind of at 14 was working on a fruit and vegetable and then started working and walking 2-3 miles each way to do his apprenticeship, and then ended up as an engineer, and then ended up doing a degree off his own back and becoming a really successful engineer. And at the age of 8, we moved up to an SO postcode.
So life got better.
Yeah, life got better to a place called Chalmers just because of my dad's work. My mum was a bank manager, very bright, and also worked in accounting and financial services and stuff, but she had a career break kind of bringing me and my brother up. So we moved up there when I was about 8 or 9, and I think overall, hard work was definitely something that I saw. Both my mum and dad are grafters, family orientated. We're relatively close. We look after each other, and also they're very resilient, and that's what I'm most grateful for. And what I mean by that is, I hardly ever saw them argue. I had no idea growing up some of the stuff that was going on in the background that I know about now. Like, they were so solid, mate. Like, rock solid. Like, I am nowhere near as solid as they were in terms of being able to continue without reacting to situations or to put on a front for the kids that they were.
It's crazy, isn't it?
What they were able to absorb and just give us a very safe, happy platform to kick on. So I took a lot from that, and I think I definitely got resilience from them, but it's shown up in different ways.
Yeah.
And they were good. They were a good crew. But I think I don't know what you would say because you were there, but I think I was very much an attention seeker. I think that generation of parents are very, very loving and very, very solid and stoic, but they're not as emotive or outpouring.
No.
Yeah,
I'd agree with that.
Completely different. Like, love my dad to bits, but the relationship I have with my boy and you have with your boy is far more emotionally connected than that ever
100%.
was. And I mean, God knows what their dads were like, right? Like, just so I think because of that gap, I think a lot of our generation then sought acceptance and recognition and all of that from the crowd.
Yeah.
And boy, did you and I step up on that stage and get that attention, right?
100%. I mean, it's fascinating because we've known each other since we were 12, and I've never realised how much of a similar upbringing we've had. Because my dad was from a family of 7, lived in a really run down. I think he lived in a tin shed at one point.
Really? Yeah.
Moved into a 3-bed house with 7 kids, 2 parents. Yeah. And my mum was come from a slightly wealthier background, but again, family of 4.
Yeah.
And a very similar kind of, very similar setup. It's really odd. And how we both turned out to be, like you said, that kind of, that kind of need for attention is just crazy. I mean, I remember being so wired towards making people laugh at school. That's
You're
all
good
I
at
wanted.
it. You're good at it.
Not as good as you, apparently. Though.
Yeah, well, set realistic goals.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? I've never really thought that. I've never really thought about
that's what
setup.
That was our
dynamic.
identity. That was feeding us something. As I say, our children don't have that particular challenge.
No.
They have a whole load of other challenges that the world's throwing at us. But yeah, so I played up a lot. I think some insecurity, attention seeking, all of that sort of stuff. Like when I think about that now, it's just cringe now, isn't it? But everyone was the same, so it is what it is.
Yeah.
Left school okay. I was kind of I could have done better at school than I did, I think, without being arrogant.
Yeah.
I actually left with some good grades, but if I could, what I would do now to go back and really smash it and see what I could achieve.
Yeah.
But you just didn't.
No.
I mean,
It's
we had
funny,
this
isn't it?
weird thing, didn't we, as well? I don't know if it still exists. You'll know because your children are a bit older than mine. You know the whole boffin thing?
Yeah.
Is that still going? Like, if someone's bright, is there still that British culture of...
Do you know what? I don't think there is.
Good.
I don't think there is. I think there's still the culture of boys wanting to be boys.
Yeah.
There's still that. I think there's still this kind of masculine feature of, probably wanting to be known as the guy to avoid, or the guy that's really funny, or the guy that's really naughty. But from what I've seen, I've seen that there's not really that kind of nerd bashing that there was at our, when we were at school. It was really deemed as,
Well, you just didn't want to be clever.
no.
But
Yeah,
how
it's
like
strange.
mental is that? Looking back at that in terms of
Crazy.
And I remember, I almost got pushed up a year in junior school because I was doing quite well at my work.
Really?
And at senior school, I kind of turned up,
They would
got
push
called
it
a
down
boff
to
a
you.
couple of times, and went, "Well, I'm not going to be that guy."
No.
And just you kind of just melted in and did enough. But I mean, I can't tell you how little I cared about my grades, how little I cared about it. It wasn't even didn't even hit my conscience.
Strange, isn't it?
No, it's
So
wild.
strange. And I think that's what I, again, like, I believe that my inability to see the future at that age has definitely led me down a path of, this is how I want my kids to really understand the effect that this is going to have on their future. Because, to be honest, I didn't give a shit about work. I didn't care what I did. All I wanted to earn was a bit of money for the weekends. It wasn't until I got to 25 years old, when my first son was born, that I actually thought, oh, I need to provide for somebody now. I need to actually concentrate on this. That's like 9 years wasted in my eyes. 9 years wasted. Like, since the age of 25, touch wood, I've progressed nicely in my career. I'm in a really good place, and I've got focus and vision to keep moving. What if I'd have started that 9 years ago? Do you know what I mean? 9 years before, where would I be now? And I think that's the kind of key message that I'm trying to deliver. But you're right. It's a completely different atmosphere for them now. Like I'm talking to Riley, who's just left school. And he's really proud, and he's talking about all his mates that are really smart and they've done all this great stuff, and it's not as frowned upon as it used to be. It's quite cool.
Well, I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
Because we were so constrained in our thinking. Like, even when I came up to London and you start to meet a bit of a different crowd.
Yeah.
A lot of them went travelling at 18.
Yeah.
It didn't even occur to me that was an option.
No.
Just go and see the world. And I didn't realise the opportunity I had to go and see the world at that point. At 18, I was drinking in the Monk's Brook, Saturday and Sunday.
After football,
Playing pool, grabbing a kebab for the walk home. And
that was life.
that was the extent of my existence.
Yeah.
And my whole existence was geared up around whether I'd won the game of pool and whether I'd made people laugh and how I was viewed in that particular situation. So it's so good to hear that, we have progressed on from that. I know 18-year-olds who are setting up businesses off the bat.
It's crazy.
And I mean, what a great time to set a business up, because you haven't got all the anxiety of the financial responsibility of children and stuff.
No.
Typically at that stage, or you can still stick in with mum and dad while you're doing it.
Yeah.
But like again, never entered my mind that actually you could go and start something, mate. You could go and create something at that age. So it's all a bit of a blur, really, when I look back at it. I'm very grateful for the people I met. I had a good time, but I can't help but feel that it was a real waste of opportunity.
Yeah.
And it's just so frustrating that you don't start to understand that until you're a bit older.
Yeah.
But good to hear the next generation are hopefully more on top of it. And I guess, through podcasts like what you're doing here and the access that other people have now to information on the internet. I mean, the internet's done a lot of harm as well. We know that. But the best thing is that people can hear about this stuff at a young age, and they're not constrained by their location anymore, are they? They're not constrained by their friendship group.
Absolutely not.
That's cool.
And I think that's really, in truth, this is what kind of inspired me to do this podcast. Because, you get my children, as most children are these days, are entwined in social media. They're constantly coming up to me, Dad, look at this car, look at this guy, look at this guy's in Dubai, and look at this guy's house. And they're inspired by it, which is great. But what they're not understanding is how that person got there. They're looking at it thinking, oh, this guy just chucked out some content on YouTube and look at him now. So they're thinking, I can stick a camera in front of my face and become a millionaire. Like, they don't understand that person's probably been told he's useless, been rejected, has failed, like put out really bad content over and over and over again. They don't get that. Awesome. So, of course, what happens is they go off all jolly ready to become a millionaire overnight. They record their first video. It gets absolutely pummeled, and then they give up. Do you know what I mean? So I think that's why it was so important to me to come up with something that actually highlights those pieces, those bits that the grind,
the real stuff,
the stuff that actually happens that no one ever talks about. So I think that's why part of the reason that we're here today.
That's a very good mission, and really pleased to be playing a small part in that discussion, because I think that's important stuff, mate. I really do. So I think that was kind of it, really. Then kind of just stumbled into the working world without a care, really. Sport was a big thing for us growing up, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Like we were all heavily involved with that. I played a lot of basketball, you probably remember at the time. Still like it. Got a pair of basketball boots on today while I was sat here. Still love the sport, and football obviously, and rugby. So sport was everything. I think I assumed I would actually end up getting a job in sport.
Yeah.
I think most of us kind of went, maybe we'll be PE teachers or maybe or something like that. Like I think out of the group, there's only probably one or two I know that actually did end up
going down that route.
But I think at the time that's what I thought I was going to end up doing, because the only thing I really loved, I think at the time, was the sport.
Yeah, it's crazy in that. Like, again, looking back, my whole life was sport. And I look at Riley today, and he's exactly the same. Like, literally, just sport mad. So it'd be interesting to see how how he kind of evolves and turns out. But like you say, there aren't many. I can, off the top of my head, I can only think of one of our friendship group at school maybe two if you include Craig Davis, who's done an amazing job as Winchester City manager, but that's not even his full-time job.
No.
So,
but he's still, I included him and Gareth.
Gareth, that's what I was thinking.
As the two. But it's very, very interesting. But again, there's so many career options open to you that no career advisor ever tells you about. I remember sitting down and they kind of like, obviously I'm in the careers world now, so I'm very interested, and I've been back to schools a few times and spoken about careers and the things you need to think about. But I remember the career advisor sat us down and was just like, you had to like tick yes or no to a bunch of stuff. Do you like this? Do you like this? And then it just gave you like a generic, you should be a policeman. Yeah. You should be a teacher. Well, it's like...
It's weird, isn't it? My memory of that exact conversation was more about the person telling me what I couldn't do. Do you know what I mean? And that feels like quite alien now, because, we should be teaching kids of that age that the world's their oyster and they can go out and do whatever they want. If they put the work in, they can achieve whatever they want. And I do distinctively remember having this conversation with this careers advisor that was basically like, you couldn't really do that because of this, and you can't really do that because of that. And I reckon you should go in the army. And that was basically it. And I was like, I don't want to go in the army. This is just, I've never even...
Following orders, not really your thing, is it?
Never. Someone shouting at me 24/7. No, that's not for me.
No.
Yeah, it's strange, isn't it?
Well, I think it's definitely got better on the career side from what I've seen. I mean, even the fact they've got these programs where there's loads of speakers coming in and just helping people take the blinkers off in terms of the opportunities that are out there. But yeah, I mean, for me, I just literally stumbled into the working world, into adult life.
So you started off as an accountant.
Yeah.
So you're how did that link into recruitment? Because I'm assuming you kind of went from accountancy into kind of the recruitment world.
Yeah.
And then
so I joined a finance practice when I was 18, and then started doing my exams whilst I was there. It was like a training contract thing. Finance definitely wasn't for me, but as I said, I use it all the time. And the best thing about it, mate, was I was auditing, which is dull. It's basically looking to see if something is what it should be and ticking it if it is and crossing it if it's not. Sorry to all the auditors. Like, I know there's more to it than that, but effectively as a junior, that's what you're doing. But so that side of it was boring. But the best, reflecting back, joining the dots backwards, the best bit about it was that I got to go out and see maybe 15 different businesses a year as part of the audit teams.
Yeah.
And most random things, I was at an abattoir doing a stock take on meat 1 minute. At the next minute, I would be at an IT company ticking off their latest technology and asset register or whatever. Like every kind of business you could imagine. And looking back, I think I'm actually really quite grateful for that experience because got to meet lots of business owners, lots of directors, see lots of different models, ways of doing things, and really learn the language of business.
Yeah.
That's what it is. Not just profit and loss and cash and balance sheet and stuff, but the actual language of culture, change, transformation, tech, all of it. It was almost like a real-time degree in some ways, I think.
Yeah. Being exposed to those kind of C-suite level
Yeah.
people that have kind of lived it and done it. And then
entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
So I say prior to that, I had no concept of entrepreneurialism or people setting up on their own. My dad was more of a corporate guy. My mum was more of a corporate lady in terms of the types of jobs and things that she did. So, yeah, getting exposure to people that had kind of decided they were going to make a bit of a dent in the world and had found a particular product and then gone for it. I was like, wow, this is pretty inspiring. So, yeah, I was bored at the time. But what ended up happening is one of the guys in the office, one of the senior guys in the office, who I'll be very grateful for, 3.5 years in, pulled me into the office and went, look, MacAskill, you're a terrible accountant, but the clients really like you. I'm going to give you 3 months to find yourself a job in sales because that's what you should be doing. Otherwise, I'm going to fire you and then you're going to have to go and do it yourself. And I was like, okay, cool. He's like, but I'm 100% convinced you should be in the commercial world, mate. Attention to detail, looking at numbers all day. That's not your bag. And I'm very grateful for that because I was coasting, right? Like, wasn't really enjoying the work. I was just turning up there. I was playing poker on the internet half the time. Like, honestly, completely waste of space. And so that's what he said. So that night, I messaged one of our mutual friends, who's a guy called Mark Badley. Shout out Badders. I'm sure he'll be sat on this couch at some point because he's got some great stories to tell.
Yeah, definitely.
Who's a close friend of both of ours.
Yeah.
Really close friend. And the reason I phoned him is because he was working in recruitment and sales and had been since he was 18 and had a very, very nice apartment down in town and a very, very nice golf GTI at the time. And I'm like, well, I'll go and get involved with Badders. So I text Badders. We went for a beer at the King Rufus pub in Chandlersford, sat down over a drink. And I just said, so what does this involve? How does it work? He told me. I think he was on a referral fee probably for getting me in, which would be typical Badders. Has referred me in. I went for an interview a week or so later and then started a career in recruitment.
Wow. So just going back to the guy in the accountancy, you say you're grateful to him. Were you grateful at the time? Like, did you see that straight away or did you?
No, I was grateful at the time because I wasn't enjoying what I was doing, but I didn't have the motivation or the impetus to do anything about it.
Yeah,
I've seen
That's
this.
mad.
That has really shaped some of my own people leadership now. So I used to really struggle with letting people go, like offboarding people.
Yeah,
Really, really struggle probably back to that teenage lad who wanted everyone to like him and be the most popular and the funniest. So having those difficult conversations to get people out of the team if they're underperforming or whatever it might be, that was a major struggle for me. I don't know if you would be the same actually with that.
I would be, 100%.
So, but what I've learned over time is actually it's the empathetic thing to do.
Yeah.
Because most people know, but they're just not doing anything about it. And nobody wants to be coming into work feeling like failing every day. And nobody comes into work wanting to do a crap job.
Yeah.
It's just they're in the wrong spot.
It's true. Yeah,
and I've had so many people now, well, not so many, but like, let's say a handful of people who I've had to move on from the team at some point, having tried to give them as much support and all of that. And, you know, I've always believed in offboarding people with the same respect and energy that you onboard them. I think it should be the same. Come up to me like a few years later, even in a pub, and going, "Hello, mate. Just wanted to say thanks so much for that. I've now go on to do this, and this. I'm moving to Dubai next week. I've ended up in this weird niche part of branding that nobody knows about that's to do with animals, and I grew up loving animals." And it's like, how cool is that? There was me like really worried at the time about what I was doing to that person, but it was empathetic.
Yeah.
What he did was brilliant management, brilliant leadership, and I should have, in hindsight, picked up on that earlier and understood that, because that's what it's all about.
Yeah. And I think that's right, Nick, because we tend to do this thing where we live in the moment. We want that kind of immediate, that kind of immediate response. So, this going back to the conversation about running, it's difficult because you don't get an immediate, if you run once, you're not going to lose a stone. You know what I mean? You want that immediate impact. And I think it's the same on the other way around as well. You're having a conversation with somebody about letting them go, and all you're thinking about is, Jesus, this guy's got a family to feed, and this is going to really put him in a stressful position. But we don't really think about is what it's actually going to do for this person's future. Because I look back, I've been made redundant a couple of times, and I've said this a few times over the past few weeks. But those points of being made redundant, in hindsight, were probably the best things that ever happened to me, because I learned so much about myself in those times. And it's really kind of shaped how I've kind of moved on. So that's really interesting.
And giving you, exposure to all sorts of different stuff. I can't remember the exact moment over the last 5-10 years or whatever, but I remember in my mind, I thought of you as doing a particular type of job in a particular type of area. And then I remember meeting up with you at some point, and then all of a sudden you were talking about Amazon. And I'm like, well, that's Ant doing in Amazon. Like, how does that work? And you'd found your way into this e-commerce world. And then I've watched you obviously flourish and learn your trade and learn that piece. And it's so interesting how you ended up getting redirected there, because I would never have, Ant 15 years ago, I'd never would have said would be an e-commerce expert who was now getting into content and recording podcasts and all that. I just never would have imagined that for you.
It's mad, isn't it?
But you obviously, through these redirections, you learn from each one, don't you? And you get new exposure. You get exposure to something you didn't even know.
Yeah.
Like, you didn't know 20 years ago that e-commerce was going to be something that interested you, and that trying to crack that code of what's going to work and working with customers on campaigns and being able to see the results in the numbers. It's almost like a sport, right?
Yeah.
So of course it works, but you wouldn't have known. But because of those redirections, you found yourself there. And I've just had a few moments with you where I've gone, well, we won't see each other for a couple of years or whatever because of life being busy. I've gone, wow, that's like, he's in a totally different world to the world that he started in.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
It's cool.
But I think there's quite a few people like that as well, and yeah, I just try and remain positive, and I always try and find a positive outcome. And I think that really helps, because rather than sitting and feeling sorry for myself because I've been made redundant, or I'm going through a rough time at work, I just try and and I think that's quite important to have that mentality, to be able to be like, right, okay, well, what have I learned from this? What can I make of it? You know what I mean? And I think that's where I've always kind of taken things.
Well, redundancy is really difficult. It is a very difficult thing. It's the second most stressful life event after divorce. So people, obviously grieving being a totally different category.
Yeah.
But yeah, in terms of life event, it's major, and there is a grieving cycle to it. And we've done a lot of work, as you know, over the last 5 years in trying to help people through that transition. Part of it is understanding that actually you haven't been made redundant, the role has.
Yeah.
So decoupling your identity and yourself from the event, which is easier said than done. But if people can get their heads around that, anyone who's listened to this that maybe has gone through it, the best way to think about it is the role was made redundant.
Yeah.
So it doesn't then have that same negative effect on your self-worth. And it's now I've got a platform to really work out. I now have some choice around what my next moves are that I maybe didn't have 3 months ago. So there's always opportunity in it, as you've proven, which is cool.
Yeah, really cool. So you meet up with badders and you get into the world of recruitment, which strangely there's quite a few of our friendship group have ended up in the same. It was sort of a bit of a thing, wasn't it? Was it quite? It was quite new, if I remember rightly. Like it wasn't, recruitment agencies and things like that. It was a relatively new thing back then.
Relatively new, yeah. I think it kicked off in the 80s and 90s, but the noughties, when I kind of entered the industry and most of our friends did, was a bit of a boom time, I would say, for people understanding what it was. And it was an amazing eclectic mix of, the majority of people were failed somethings. There was failed lawyers, failed accountants, people who didn't know what the hell they wanted to do, lots of sporty guys and girls who were able to enjoy the competitiveness of it and the team element. Good recruitment companies are as close as you can get to a sports team in terms of the feel, the energy, the commitment, the vibe. So rocked up with badders, joined a really good local, sizable local business down in Fareham Way. Picked up a desk in. You get given basically an area to recruit in. Mine was procurement and supply chain. I had to Google what procurement was on the way to the interview. No idea. It's not one of those words you come across.
Not really.
Procurement, buying stuff, right? That's what it is.
Yeah.
So buying and supply chain. And so, kind of got involved with that world. In the first week, I broke the sales dial-outs record, which had stood for 3 years. So
Jeez.
I looked at, they had a records book of, achievements. And the only one that I had a chance of making an early impact on was that. So I just said to my boss, right, what do I need to do to beat that, so that in the first month I've just announced that I'm here and made a mark and set some intent for what I wanted to do. So I just went for it. Met some brilliant people, got on well. Badder's always had, some big ambitions. He was probably the most ambitious of all of us at the time.
Yeah.
Very entrepreneurial. Eventually he I'd been there for about 18 months. He'd been there about 4 or 5 years, I think. And he ended up moving up to London and got a job in the Square Mile in the city. And 3 months in, he phoned me and he was like, mate, this is unbelievable. And I was like, what? He's like, oh, and, he just listed off, the fun he was having, the size of the deals he was doing, the people he had met. He's working right in the middle of the city of London having a ball. He said, so... he's like, come up and have an interview. You've got to come and have a look at this. I'd always had London a bit in my mind anyway. I'd always thought I'd love to work up here sometime.
Yeah.
We're sat here today. I love London.
Yeah, I do.
And particularly in your 20s, it's one of the best places you could spend your time, right?
Yeah.
And I was keen to break out of the Hampshire thing a little bit and to go and see new pastures. So I came out of the tube station at Bank. Badders was waiting for me, looking like a totally different human within 3 months. Pinstripe suit, massive knot in his tie. He had slick back black hair tucked in, like every bit the city boy. And he's kind of walking me over to meet his boss and giving me a pep talk, going, right, this is the type of stuff they're interested in, etc. I jumped in, did the interview. Obviously, Badders put in a good word for me as well and looked after me. And they just doubled my salary, basically. They just went, yeah, cool, move on up. So Badders and I then rented a place in North London for a year and started working in the middle of central London in city-based recruitment in the noughties, which was a sight to behold. It was, I mean, some of the stuff that we saw and some of the people we met, it was wild. But it was really, really, really good fun. Really learned loads from it. Wasn't the healthiest lifestyle, but it was. We were happy. We were having fun.
Yeah, I can imagine. Were you and Zoe together at this point?
Yeah. So we were in the when I moved so I met Zoe at the accountancy practice. She was my first boss.
Oh, right.
So when I turned up, was shown round. It's just, mostly, very experienced, polished old accountants, and then there's this absolute blonde rocket in the corner. I went over and said, "Hello, and this is your new boss, Zoe." And I'm like, "What a result this is!" So the whole time we were working together, I had two girlfriends during that period. She had a boyfriend for the majority of that period, but I pretty much fell for her the moment I met her. I used to phone her at a desk and be like, "Meet me in the loft." She'd be like, "Go away, you silly boy." Like, she's a couple of years old and she's hanging out. I mean, imagine the trouble we'd get in for that now. But all of that sort of stuff. And then, one day our relationships broke down at a similar time. And so we got together just after I'd left.
Oh, okay.
So we were pals, basically. Well, she thought we were pals whilst we were working together. So I was with Zoe at this point, but moved up to Badders. She had a really good job still at the accountancy practice. Didn't want to go up at that time, and it was kind of quite early into our relationship. So did a year with Badders in North London. Badders left to move in with his girlfriend of the time, and I moved south to move into a shared house with Tristan.
Oh, yeah.
And Tim Barrett, who was a great lad, and the three of us lived together in Clapham for a while, shifted to a new company, got promoted into managerial roles and started to kind of move up within the industry. Did that for a couple of years, and then Zoe moved up, and then we got an apartment there together for a couple of years as well.
Nice. So whereabouts in London did you and Zoe live?
We lived in a place called Wandsworth Town, which is not too far from the studio that we're in now.
Yeah.
So we had a tiny apartment, not much bigger than the size of this room, but we could see the Thames from it.
Wow.
And so I felt like I was winning anyway.
Yeah.
I had a one-bed apartment, but it was brand new. Like, we literally pulled the plastic off. We were renting it. It was costing an arm and a leg, even though it was tiny. But the location was absolutely superb, and there was all sorts of people living in there. It was cool. We had a really good time.
Yeah, amazing. And then, so you guys kind of got used to that London lifestyle. What happened from there?
Yeah, so got used to the London lifestyle and moved up in terms of responsibility and what we were doing, definitely at that point. And then what had happened was there was the 2008 and 2009 downturn.
Yeah.
And so most of the recruitment companies were struggling, and the company I was working for, most of it was struggling. But because we were working in procurement and supply chain, which is all about saving money, actually our business continued to grow during that period through sheer dumb luck of being off that desk that I got sat on that first day at Matchtech, right? Way back when I started in the industry. So our numbers were up. And the CEO of the company that I was working for in Australia noticed this and was really struggling in our particular industry in Australia, and approached us to relocate to Australia at that point to go and replicate what we were doing in the UK for them in Australia.
Wow. So that was literally an up sticks and...
Well, yeah, I mean, it was a big decision, right? It was a really, really big decision. We had but Zoe had always said, I'd been offered to go to Dubai previously, and Zoe wasn't too bothered about that. But yeah, my wife Zoe had travelled Australia when she was young.
Oh, okay.
And had gone, if you ever get the chance to get us out there, I'm coming.
Let's go, yeah.
So we went for it. We absolutely went for it. Got relocated out there. I arrived 4 weeks before Zoe, which was a disaster because by the time she turned up, I'd blown all of the relocation allowance on nights out and having an absolute ball. I shouldn't be left unattended for 4 weeks in Australia. But I had a great time. So we did that. We moved out there. Zoe moved out there. Zoe got a job with a really high-end cosmetic business that was it was in most of the department stores, but also as a big e-com cosmetic business in the early kind of D2C days, I guess you would call it now. So she was doing that. I was working for this company, but again, I actually moved company 6 weeks to 8 weeks after turning up in Australia, which was a weird one.
Right.
So what happened is, I went and met a lady called Tanya Siri, who's an amazing entrepreneur. She's got lots of different organisations, and I still collaborate with her sometimes on things now as a customer. And right, so I sat down to meet her as a customer because she was recruiting some people in her team.
Yeah.
And at the end of that chat, she said to me, well, of course you can help us recruit, but I've got this little executive recruitment business that we launched 12 months ago that's hemorrhaging money, and I think you're going to get bored where you are, so why don't you come and become MD of this little business, and why don't we grow it out across Australia together? I was like, no way I can do that. I've just relocated over. They've paid me a relocation allowance.
Yeah.
I have to pay all this stuff back. She's like, yep, we'll include that all in the offer. I'm like, there's no, like, my wife's not going to go for this. I've literally, like, I'm at a company that knows me. It's safe. She's like, okay, well, let's go out for dinner. I was like, all right, cool. So I said, so we're going to go out for dinner with this lady. I just need you to roll with this and see what you think. She also brought her husband out, who was an ASX 50 CEO, one of the top business leaders in Australia. And these two just sat with us and had a chat about life, had a chat about business, had a chat about everything. And by the end of it, I was walking out with a bottle of 18-year-old McLaren that he'd bought me as a present because I was a Scottish surname. And I was looking at Sam, I was like, I'm going to have to go for this, aren't I? I'm going to have to go for this. So 2 months into the company relocating me over the other side of the world, I'm the guy who's then going in and resigning to the business that have just relocated me over the world. Awful.
How do they take that?
Terribly.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And rightly so. I'd have been livid if I was them.
Oh, man.
Didn't feel good about it at all. I didn't feel good about it at all.
Right move, though, for you?
Yeah. Yeah, zero regrets. I mean, the best thing about it was there was a load of other brands and departments within her world, mainly who were in management consulting and professional services. And so, what was I? 29, 30. I was MD of this boutique. We opened up a Sydney office. I was working out of Melbourne. I was traveling all over the country. She could get me in so many different rooms and exposure to so many different people. And I was sitting in a leadership team with 50-year-olds with PhDs, learning how they sell management consultancy and how they deliver transformation projects and how they do all this stuff, and just like absorbing it in. And the other thing about Tanya, who's great, was she used to be the marketing director of Disney. So she had a marketing skill set.
Right.
And so she was the one who got me blogging way back then. You're talking like 10 years ago now. She was like, what you do, you do recruitment, Andrew, but actually recruitment is just marketing. You've got an audience, which is candidates that you're looking to attract to a job.
Yeah.
So, throwing up adverts one way, but we've got to be thinking of other content plays to attract these talent pools into the projects that we're doing. Because if we can do that, then clients will pay us more because they'll see us as, ahead of the competition and doing stuff that's a bit more sophisticated. So there started the content journey.
So what was that? Like, literally sitting in front of a camera?
No, it was blogs at the time.
Oh, blogs.
Yeah.
So just writing.
Yeah, but this is before anyone was doing it, really.
Yeah.
No one was doing it. So I just started writing blogs and publishing them on the industry, on the procurement industry in Australia. So it was everything from movers and shakers, like people that were going to different companies, to the latest trends, to leadership. Like, I was blogging a lot about the topic of leadership, all sorts of different things. And it was just like, it just became a big point of difference for us that we were using content in a way that nobody else was.
How did the first blog that you wrote, how did that go down?
Really good.
Really?
Yeah, really good. But that's because it was, there wasn't as much competition for audience or attention at that point at all.
So how did you know that it went really good? How did you know that it went really well? Did you get like people reaching out, or was it just...
Yeah, so inbound inquiries, but also just just people talking about it. I mean, what subsequently happened, and it answers your question, because this was the real trigger moment when people asked me about LinkedIn and why have you spent so much time building a personal brand and using LinkedIn and things. What ended up happening is we had a baby. We got married out in Australia.
Yeah.
Had an absolute ball. Had a baby.
Do I remember watching I think you live streamed your wedding, didn't you? Did you live stream?
No, we didn't. But there was loads of videos that were doing the rounds. You probably caught one of those.
Probably caught one of
and
those.
obviously a lot of our mutual pals flew out, which was fun.
Yeah.
But we had a baby in Australia, and the plan for us was never to have a family 15,000 miles away from both sets of our parents. And so it was absolutely the right time for us to come back. It was hard walking away from that business because I'd 3 years of building it up and and the lifestyle out in Australia was unreal. But right decision, family, I think, core values.
Yeah,
that's what we wanted. So we came back, and I said to Zoe, I'm just going to join a local recruitment firm. I had been quite stressed when we were in Oz because of I was out of my depth a little bit, making mistakes, felt under pressure a lot.
Yeah,
I was too young and inexperienced to be doing that job. Really, I was out of my depth. She knew that, but I think she kind of fancied throwing me in the deep end and giving me that opportunity, which was kind of a... But I arrived back and I said, I'm just going to join a local search firm. Just reduce the amount of responsibility, just do the job, choose life, spend plenty of time with you and Ace. That's what I'm going to do. So I started at this new company, and the first thing I did in the first few weeks was start producing content. They were producing it at a company level, but no one individually was doing any personal branding out the 85 people in the company, and particularly no one out of the 15 that were in the UK, right? Nobody was doing it. So I just started doing it, started getting some traction, getting some stuff happening. And then one day we were on the way to one of the major airlines for a client meeting. And it was myself and the CEO of this company. And we sat down, and he was another Andrew, actually, really smart guy. And we sat down with the COO of this airline, and he sat down opposite me. And I said, okay, cool. So would you like to know, a bit about us and a bit about how we do things differently? And he said, no, I've read all your blogs. I want you to do this project for us. I was like, okay, cool. And then he just downloaded what the project was. We agreed a price and we left. And my CEO, we got in the car and he just looked at me and he was like, what was that? And I was like, I'm not too sure. It's like, he had already bought from you before even meeting you. And I was like, yeah. He's like, do you know how many years we've been trying to get into that airline to do business? Way. He's like, you've got in at the C level, and he was pre-sold. As long as we didn't walk in there and,
rip jeans and...
Yeah, or do something stupid or screw up. He's like, you'd already pre-sold that. He's like, right, I want to make you commercial director of the group. I'm like, oh, no. And roll out this amongst all the other kind of sales and marketing ideas you have across the team of 85. And that's when I went all in on the personal branding, because to have someone of that level say, I've already decided, I've already bought way before you turned up here. Of course we're working with you.
That's unreal.
So then we went off on that. 12 months later became MD, and, screwed my work-life balance all up again. And that was that. So that was kind of the flow. So
where did this is all kind of written blog. When did you make the transition from that into the kind of video content?
Yeah. So again, the moment LinkedIn offered native video content, the first day, and initially it was just selfie videos. I don't know if we were connected on LinkedIn at the time, but I used to literally...
Yeah, I remember.
I used to just stop, go like that and go, hi, Andrew MacAskill here, hope you're good, and then just give some kind of nugget based on what was going on during the day. Like, all my content would come from the conversations. So I'd have a conversation with somebody about something. Okay, there's something in that. If they're interested in that, then other people will be. Then I'd go for a walk at lunch, I used to stop in front of the church in Winchester, down like little side out. I was all over the place, just vlogging as we were going.
How comfortable were you doing that?
I got quite a lot of grief. Grief and trolling initially, which made me feel uncomfortable.
From who?
Strangers.
What, that were passing while you were doing it?
No, it wasn't. It was people online.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Just people just diving into the comments and giving you grief. I found that really hard to deal with initially.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, I used to get all sorts. I think my favourite ones were like the David Brent of recruitment and all that. Like, I used to get a lot of Ricky Gervais. Probably the beard and round face didn't help very much on that. So yeah, I used to get loads of grief. The hardest thing was continuing to do it, but letting and trying not to be affected by some of the online noise that was coming back.
So how did you deal with that? Did you ignore it? Did you ever respond to it?
All of the above. I got in online scraps quite a few times by counter-punching, which is not a good idea. Turns out, if you do get a troll at any point during this podcast journey, don't feed it. That's what they want.
Right.
Sometimes ignoring it. Eventually, I had a coach at the time who wasn't a personal branding coach, just a executive coach. And he just got me to reframe it. He basically said, what do you think is going on in somebody's life to the point that it makes sense for them to go on and say something negative to you? So if you can start to pity that it completely absolves you of the stress of it.
Yeah.
So he just got me to reframe it and say, look, if it makes sense to somebody to, abuse somebody on the internet or to try and take someone down or to be negative, then really you've got to be worried about what's going on with them and not let it affect you a second.
Yeah. Did you ever get any kind of negativity from anybody that you knew?
Yeah. Yeah. People were, banter, but there's negativity in the banter sometimes, right?
Yeah, I get it.
We all struggle with that line, don't we, at various points?
Yeah.
But no, yeah, like loads of our mates would screen print videos, spin it round on the WhatsApp groups.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like all of that. And, and it was funny then when it all started to pay off and all the other different things that happened. Like some people were just like, when you started doing that, I thought you were such a moron. And they were like, I can't believe what that's now resulted in happening for you. They couldn't get their head around it.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a bit of a confession to make because I was probably one of those.
Yeah.
I know you well enough to respect you for what you're doing.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I'm looking at it thinking, man, this guy's got some real balls to be doing this sort of stuff. And I don't think it was what is he doing? It was I couldn't quite comprehend.
Yeah.
How are you coming up with the idea just to pull it? And what are the people around you thinking when you're walking down the road? And
Well, they would be laughing mainly. Like they come past
probably. I think I remember you doing one, and somebody you were on a bridge.
Yeah.
Somebody shouted something out.
That was in Germany, and someone flew past on a bike and was like, "Blogger." I was like, "Thank you," and I just carried on.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
And I just carried on.
But I think like the more I watched, the more I started, and I guess this is everybody's journey that's kind of engaged with you. The more you watch it, actually, the more you stop thinking about why is this guy doing it, and you start listening to the message, and it all starts to make sense. And I think seeing you on that journey from, I remember, I think you did one walking down an alleyway with your old, the old style Apple earphones in, and just, kind of to, being on a national TV advert. Like, it's mental. Like, and I think, was there ever a point in that journey where you thought, what's the point in this? Like, should I just stop?
Not should I stop, but it does become it does become an anxiety almost to make sure that you're doing it.
Okay.
So it's not without its stresses because, and I still have this today. It's like, I've got to post. So once you're in it, you feel like you have to maintain it and do it. So it does grip on you a little bit, and you do spend way too much time, if you're not careful, just in the online world and not the offline world, and it becomes your world.
Yeah.
And I've got lots of friends, and I know lots of, particularly on LinkedIn, I'm not, skilled or particularly interested in any of the other platforms, but I know a lot of people that, go deep into that rabbit hole. So no, I was never deterred from doing it. I've always been quite confident in being able to articulate messages and being quite confident in my communication.
Yeah.
So I felt like I was good at it and could get better at it, and that it would add value.
Yeah.
And there was enough good feedback. People, that airline moment, mate. Honestly, that just completely blew my mind.
Game changer.
And first year everyone was kind of taking the piss, taking screenshots, asking what he's doing. It's a bit like tall poppy syndrome. It's like being the boff.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, I'm not gonna retract this time. I'm just gonna keep going.
Just keep going.
And I kept going. Year 2, everyone was going, there's something in this. By year 3, I reckon 90% of, like, particularly competitors and stuff. I had people do parody videos at one point.
Really?
Competitors doing parody videos.
You know you've made it then.
Yeah.
Right?
But it's like, it was so in their head, and they were also frustrated that I'd got ahead of the game and had started to build that audience. And do you know what I mean? They started doing parody videos and stuff. But fast forward 5 years later, the vast majority of those companies were paying me when I was self-employed to come in and consult with their team on creating exactly what I'd created.
Wow.
So it had gone from trolling, abuse, mickey taking, everybody, even colleagues thinking it was a waste of time and it was just an ego trip. All of that stuff, all of that negativity into, hang on, there might be something into this, into, oh my God, what you've done's brilliant, into, can we pay you significant cash to come and teach everybody else how to be like you? And it's like, I think that's why it's really important for particularly young people to understand, you know, we're all told this, and it's so true, mate, like not getting too down or deterred when things aren't going well is important, and not getting too ahead of yourself or, you know, egotistical or too on top when things are going well is also important, because those same people had a totally different viewpoint at both those points, and you've just got to
keep driving through it,
keep going through it.
What was the motivation for you? Like, what kept you on? What, in those days where you got 3 negative comments and one of your colleagues has told you you're egotistical, what was it that made you say, fuck you, I'm doing this anyway?
I think I believed in the strategy. I enjoyed doing it. I still do. I enjoy doing it. I'm enjoying today. Like, I enjoy content creation of any type. Also, you'll totally get this because of your Amazon background. It's like a giant Rubik's Cube. Like, the algorithm is like a giant Rubik's Cube that you have to learn how to line up. And so for me, it was like a series of experiments. I'll give you an example. So those walk and talk videos used to get an average of about 20,000 organic views. Now, I mean, that's wild. I didn't even have a LinkedIn premium account. At the height, I was getting between 1 and 2 million views a month for free.
Jeez.
Right? So there was the exposure. But when things started going well, I got into one of the top studios in the country and paid a fortune for them to do, you know, incredible videos, and they bombed.
What do you mean they bombed?
Excuse me. Yeah, so what I mean in terms of they bombed is the views and the engagement on the highly expensive, really, really high-end videos bombed.
Do you think that's because they were less relatable?
Yep. And I think it's because, you know, the walking and talking for that particular channel and that particular audience was an authentic way for me to get a message out to many people all at once. Whereas the moment it felt too much like marketing, people's barriers went up. And they were like, "Oh, this is a manicure. This is this is an advert. This is a trailer. This is a."
God, that's really interesting.
So weirdly, those ropey, shaky videos that we started off with just went bang. And then I learned how to do written copy and to space it all out at the time and have a question at the end and reply to the comments in the first hour to keep the algorithm ticking and to, you know, and all of that. And then we started teaching other people some of this stuff. And it just went and went and went. And whilst I was doing that MD role, on the side, I set up Executive Career Jump, which was really a vehicle to help people in transition to learn how to use LinkedIn and to learn how to interview better. And one day, 5 years into the MD role that I described, I got called to a hotel and fired. Didn't see that coming. My wife was the FD. She got called to the hotel and fired 30 minutes after.
My God.
So 5 years into an MD role where bang, that was gone. But I had this Executive Career Jump vehicle in the background, right? And so, I mean, we were really struggling with our positions being made redundant and the grieving cycle and everything we spoke about earlier. But what we did was we channeled it into Executive Career Jump and went, do you know what? This is the sign that we now have to go all in on this passion project. And so we set out a strategy. We had a mission, which was a mission. We were on a mission to end job search misery. That was our tag.
Heard it a lot.
It was everywhere. We got behind it, started selling online courses. We did a Black Friday deal for £99 for a CV and LinkedIn refresh. Sold about 10 of those on Black Friday. So it's like, bang, we've turned a bit of cash there, started doing stuff. And then through sheer dumb luck, the pandemic hit 6 months later, and the entire world was focused on redundancy, job search and careers. And here we are, having been unceremoniously fired, suddenly sat there with a LinkedIn audience of about 12, 13,000, with an online course that solves the problem of redundancy, with CV and LinkedIn advice expertise, and a knowledge of how to use the algorithm on LinkedIn.
That is unbelievable.
Sheer dumb luck.
But it goes back to our point earlier of, you know, redundancy isn't, I mean, for you guys, I mean, that's double whammy, isn't it?
Yeah.
To go and not having a clue.
Yeah.
To go, so you got fired, and then 30 minutes later, you must have known that Zoe was up for the same thing.
Yeah.
And this company obviously knew that you guys were married.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, that was part of why we all went together. So it's just, yeah, they'd moved in a different direction. It was the day before our kickoff meeting. So I'd spent that week putting together a kickoff meeting. We had people come from all over the country dining in to kick off the new financial year. And it was, they'd gone in a completely different direction. So that was hard. But as I say, we met, kind of hustled. I took some consultancy contracts, did some stuff whilst we were building up Career Jump in the background. And then this pandemic hits. Everyone's locked down. The lockdown also coincided, again, sheer dumb luck, but, you know, you've got to be in it to win it, haven't you?
Yeah.
With LinkedIn generating the ability for people to broadcast live. So LinkedIn Live became a thing.
Right.
And because I had 12, 13, 14,000 followers at that time, which at the time was a lot, because most people were struggling to get to their 500 connections,
Yeah.
Let alone to get to that kind of level. They gave me the opportunity to beta test it along with another 49 people
right.
and to give feedback to the product team. So I was able to broadcast live, and the day we got locked down, I went on the old Bond store in Southampton, which is a great place I was working out of, got into a room and thought, give this a go then. Downloaded the live streaming software, pressed live, and just went live. And about 20 people turned up, and I just said, look, it's a hard time for everyone at the moment. I thought I'd go live in case anyone had any questions about CV and LinkedIn. And they did, and I answered them. And I thought that was quite cool. And so then the next week, I advertised the fact I was going to go live and got a bit more of an audience going, Fast forward 3 months, we had the biggest live broadcast in the UK, which is called Job Search Hacks Live. We had, at any point in time, 200 to 300 people live, generating 1,000 to 1,200 comments per session. And we had 5,000 to 10,000 people watch the replay all over the world. And it was just going out. I didn't have to do a single bit of business development because a load of that traffic then went and subscribed to our program or booked in for a one-on-one or whatever it might be. And most importantly, during what was a really, really difficult time, we were able to get so much help out to so much people and get a really good community building and a really good feeling going in terms of what was happening. And it just kind of kicked on from there.
Must be, I mean, like you say, timing.
Yeah, totally.
Because, you've literally gone through the same journey, double really, because two people being made redundant from the same household. And that's kind of given you the, all of the content you need really, isn't it? Because you've actually gone through it. You've done it. You know how these people are feeling.
Yeah, that's so true, mate. Being able to articulate and explain that journey to people from personal experience. We ended up publishing a book that I wasn't expecting anything to happen with. The idea with that was that for under £10, rather than people having to buy our courses, which were in the hundreds, that people could get some quick guidance and go. And the first chapter in the book is me talking about the day that I was invited to the hotel and fired.
Yeah.
And then the emotional grieving journey and how you think it's okay, and then one day it just washes over you and you realise the size of the task ahead and all this stuff.
Did you have you had both kids by this point as well?
Yes. Yeah, one baby.
Oh my God.
Yeah, one baby, 4.
I mean, we've all been in the situation where, things get a bit dodgy, things get a bit rocky, and you start to think, oh man, like this, I could be going back on this journey. But to walk in unexpected with 2 kids, 1 baby,
bang,
both incomes just dissolving overnight.
Yeah.
How did you get the motivation to kind of channel everything into that? Because it's hard enough being made redundant when you're losing one lot of income, right? And again, I've been there, and I know I kind of go through the cycle of, it's like a relationship breakup, right? You feel like you've done something wrong. Then you start to feel worthless. Then you start to wonder, am I ever going to get a job again? Because these people don't want me working for them. They think I'm useless. So why would anybody else want me to work? How do you go from there to literally like going all out on your on a thing that you've kind of been toying with? Do you know what I mean? Like, how does that?
Yeah. So I tried to let go of the financial anxiety of it and just focus entirely on the mission. So what was keeping me going, to answer your question, was the note from somebody who I'd done an interview training with last week, who texted me saying I got the job.
Right.
And I was just like, this is amazing. And I was getting messages, just people who'd never bought anything from us, but had tuned into our lives and gone, you gave me something at a moment that I really, really needed. I've now made all these new connections, this community, like, keep doing what you're doing. So I was overwhelmed with amazing feedback and reinforcement. And it just felt so worthwhile and bigger than anything. And I trusted that if I kept going with that mission, that the financial elements would take care of themselves. And so I just went for it. But I was topping up the income. I'm forever grateful to my mate Louis, who gave me a part-time consulting contract with his startup for a few months. Right. Cool. So I knew then that I had a chunk coming in every month. A few people did things like that, invited me in to do training, nice chunk of cash, come and do this. So we were topping up along the way and hedging along the way with different consultancy contracts. But ultimately, as I say, it's the mission just kept building, and we were spoilt. Like, to get that amount of satisfaction out of the impact you're having, it just motivates you to want to get it out to more and more people.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
It becomes a responsibility, I guess. You get these people that are saying to you, this is really helping. And then you almost feel like, wow, I've got to carry it on.
Got to keep going. But there's a dark side to that, because, and a lot of coaches feel this, in that, you're dealing with individuals that are going through really difficult times, and you can end up taking on everybody else's anxiety. So you can end up, like
feeling it.
I was getting to the end of the week frazzled.
Yeah.
Totally frazzled.
Yeah.
And, we're locked down. That was hard, wasn't it, as well? Locked down, on Zoom all day, taking on other people's anxiety who are also locked down, frazzled.
Yeah.
So it was definitely an exhausting period, but incredibly rewarding too, I guess.
I think the real light bulb moment came for me, and we've talked about this before. At the time, I was working for a business at the other end of the country. I'm near Manchester. And we were furloughed. We were furloughed for 12 weeks, which in itself, comes with a level of anxiety, because
it was a difficult halfway house.
Yeah. The business is carrying on, but they're furloughing the entire sales team. How they clearly think that they can continue trading without us. So why would they take us back on? You kind of go through that kind of anxiety. And I remember one of the I used to talk with the team quite a lot. There were 12 of us in total, and they furloughed 11 people, so they kept one salesperson on. So the majority of the 11 salespeople that were furloughed stayed in constant contact. We were talking each day and whatever else. And this one day, one of the girls I worked with messaged me saying, "I've just found this guy on LinkedIn. You need to watch him. He's amazing." And lo and behold, sends me through Andrew MacAskill's profile.
Yeah.
And I was just like, is this a bit of a weird joke? Like, is this a bit of weird banter? I couldn't comprehend that somebody at the other end of the country independently came across you and has recommended you back to me. And I'm like, dude, I used to go to school with him. And it was like, what?
Yeah.
And that was it for me. That was the light bulb moment. I was like, wow, this guy is really, he's really kind of moving. And
yeah, it was wild. And during that period, we went from 20,000 followers to 90,000 followers. As you know, LinkedIn hired us on an influencer contract for 6 months, and I ended up in the TV ads, like you said earlier, and speaking at business schools up and down the country about LinkedIn, personal branding and careers. Still do a bit of that now, which has been brilliant. Published the book, didn't expect anything to happen. It became an Amazon bestseller.
Wow.
It's got 100 5-star reviews. Anyone that wants to see it, Job Search Playbook, go and get your copy. The whole point of that, as I say, was to get something out that was a more price accessible point. So that went off really, really well. It was a wild time. We had people, Yeah, we were like LinkedIn famous during the online period of lockdown. So even when we came out, we'd have people come up to us in Starbucks or in central London or whatever and say hello and start talking to us. Zoe found it all very bizarre. It made me realise, like, we were like not even close to being famous. If forget A to C list celebrities, we were like an F list level of notoriety. But my God, it did make me realise, like, those guys must lead a very, very difficult life. Like, anonymity is a beautiful thing.
And I guess it really highlights the power of the internet.
Yeah,
because how can you go from recording a video in your lounge to being recognised in London?
Weird.
It's mental.
Yeah, weird. Yeah, the BBC interviewed us for articles. We won an award at the Noras for the best employment website, beating off huge competition. Had a big awards night up there and had a great time.
Unbelievable.
It was just a really amazing period. Very grateful for it.
So how did the whole LinkedIn thing come about? Or did they get in touch with you?
Yeah, they've got a creator team, and they were wanting to do so LinkedIn. I've always been very passionate about verbally, so obviously that appealed to them. But they had to select 6 change makers for different causes. So there was one who was responsible for diversity, one who was responsible for disability, mental health, racial equality, gender equality, and careers and unemployment. And I was the careers and unemployment official LinkedIn change maker. So they approached me. I then had to do a bit of a shoot with the branding agency, and then we started creating content. And then they invited us to a film studio and told us that obviously they were putting this advert out. I'm like, okay, cool. And the whole point was about making LinkedIn be a force for good. That was the idea. And we were the change makers in our industries who were helping make real change using LinkedIn as the platform to make real change. So I turn up on this set. I mean, I've never seen anything like it, mate. Like, this is, to think I used to walk down alleyways doing selfie videos. The set was in central London. There must have been 30 to 40 staff involved with the shoot. I had like people with cameras flung over their backs, like doing all this in front of me. And I had a load of casting sessions and we had to work out what I was going to say. And they did a long form one, which went out via all their socials, which is just 90 seconds of an interview with me, talking about redundancy and all the stuff we've been talking about. But then they took a snippet from each of the long form ones and made the LinkedIn ad. Yeah. And my LinkedIn line was that we need to stop accepting job misery in exchange for job security. Right? So basically saying, if you're miserable in your work at the moment, but it feels safe, we need to stop that because that's not happiness. And that was just my one line. That campaign ended up winning 7 or 8 awards, became the biggest media campaign of that year, was shown on Sky Sports, Channel 4, all of the apps, and across Europe. And so I had people in Switzerland texting me going, I've just seen your big red forehead on a screen in a sports bar. And I was like, yeah, sorry about that.
I remember vividly. I remember because you didn't, or I didn't see that you'd kind of talked on social media or anywhere about this advert going on.
Not the advert, no.
And I'm sat at home, and you know what you do, you don't really pay attention to adverts, and I'm just kind of chatting to the wife. And I just sat at the corner, I heard your voice, that's what did it. And I was like, wait a minute. Rewound it, and Cara said, that sounded like khaki. And we've played it back, and there you were. And we were like, what?
Yeah.
We couldn't believe it. Like, you know, we were just kind of expecting some form of, like, you know, warning, you know, like, oh, I've done this for this advert. And all of a sudden, you just kind of appeared on our TV.
You don't really want to, I didn't really want to, like, go online going, oh, I've done an advert. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I suppose.
So I think the surprise element was quite cool, but I had no idea it was going to end up so big. Like, I just thought, you know, it'd be an advert, maybe a couple of people will see it on the app or whatever, but it was a huge campaign, mate. They quadrupled the budget on it because the viewer sentiment was so high about the campaign and what it was standing for. We just kept investing in it.
Jeez. So talk to me about, I mean, you said you've never done anything this big before. When you got the call to say, you know, we want you to do this, what was the feeling?
Well, it's funny. So I got the call I came off with the call, and I went to Zoe and I went, right, we're going to have to place a big bet here. And she's like, what do you mean? I said, a branding agency just phoned me about appearing in this LinkedIn campaign. It's going to be massive. I was like, but they haven't spoken about price yet, and I know they're going to want some money for us for all this.
Okay.
And she was like, really? I was like, yeah, this is how these things work. Like, you have to pay to play. So I haven't got their proposal through, but we're catching up next week to talk through the proposal. So the actual campaign, I wanted to do it straight away. I loved what it stood for. I'm relatively comfortable on camera, and I also saw the exposure opportunity that's out within it. So I had no hesitation about doing the campaign. My hesitation was, is it going to cost me 20 grand to do it?
Yeah.
Is it going to be 25? Because a lot of events even now you have to pay to speak at, right? Or whatever it might be. And so then I jumped on the follow-up call and they went, okay, cool. Well, we haven't spoken about the deal for this yet. And I went, yeah, no, good. I was going to bring that up. So can you just run me through it? And they're like, well, obviously we're going to pay you X. I'm like, okay, yeah, good. That's roughly what I thought.
No.
Right, they're paying me for this. This is an absolute joke. Like, yeah, like just deadpan, mate. Like proper poker face going on. Yeah, cool. We can probably make that work. Yeah, fine. Like just spin the paperwork over and we'll crack on. But you know, it's a bit less than what we've done in the past, but we'll make it work.
Yeah, we'll make it work.
Come off the phone and I was like, they're paying us to do it. She's like, you're kidding. I was like, nope. I was like, this is a paid ambassador contract. So it turns out, and I didn't know this, that they'd approached me the year before. And again, this is a bit of serendipity. Because when I went, the marketing dude at the set on the day, the LinkedIn marketing dude, Connor, great guy, came up, he went, oh, good. So you finally returned my messages then. And I thought, what are you talking about? It's like, last year, I wanted you on the LinkedIn campaign last year. I was like, really? He's like, yeah, have a look in your LinkedIn history. And there he is going, oh, I've got this opportunity to appear in this LinkedIn thing.
No
I would have
way.
looked at it at that time when we were doing the startup, and in my brain gone, oh, he'll be wanting a load of money for that. And we're not in the position to do that because we've both just been made redundant and blah, blah, blah. So I'd ignored it. Now, that's kind of crazy, but my God, did that work in our favour? Because we ended up being in what became, that campaign they did that year was only socials. It wasn't TV. So if I'd have replied to that, I wouldn't have then been approached about this, and I wouldn't have then got the massive exposure that drove all our following and our ongoing opportunities. So again, mate, like, I think, you know, the Steve Jobs talk that he gives about joining the dots backwards, like these things all seem to kind of interconnect, don't they? And give you opportunities. You just got to make sure that when it arises, that you back yourself, you plant your feet, you don't overthink it, and you throw
Just
yourself
crack
in.
on.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, you know, that for me, did it come through as a sponsored message? Because I always ignore those.
Yeah, it was something like that. Yeah. But thank God I ignored the first one. But the second one, they were a bit more persistent, and also had some money in the bank because we'd had a reasonable year. So I thought this might be a good investment.
Yeah.
So I was going in with an investment lens on. Turns out they're paying me, and I got, you know, a special photo with a special LinkedIn changemaker thing in. Like my profile was different online. LinkedIn's own company page started sharing my blogs. So I then had, you know, 8 million followers of the LinkedIn company page seeing my content. It was just an amazing blessing. The other change makers were incredible people to me. I had a bit of imposter syndrome there, I have to say, just in terms of the size of the missions that they were solving around sustainability and race and all of that. And there's me, like, I'm the job search guy. Good to meet you.
Welcome.
So yeah, pretty cool.
How did you deal with that kind of imposter syndrome? Was there any point where you were just, I mean, I'm assuming you felt out of your depth a little bit at some point.
I did in the meetups with the other influencer types, I say, because they were just far further on than I was. And I don't think I dealt with that well. I think I was awkward. I don't think I relaxed. I think I was awkward. Yeah, it was tough.
Did you learn from that?
Yeah, I did. And I also learned a lot from the coaching that everybody is just a person, aren't they?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I think due to hierarchies and different things, we put people on certain pedestals for certain things. And, you know, a lot of these people that have achieved amazing things deserve our respect. Like the grind, to come back to this podcast that's gone on behind that to get them there, is huge. But actually, if you spend time with these folks, you know, they get up, they shower in the morning, they have the same anxieties we do. They argue with their other half. They're trying to run their kids around to everywhere they need to run their kids around. And whilst they might not have the monetary worries or the business worry, they've got a whole load of other stuff going on in their life. You know, they're just people.
Yeah.
They're just people. And so, yeah, it's over time. And where I'm at now is I feel like I can, because of the coaching I was coaching CEOs and stuff like that. That's weird. What am I doing coaching a CEO?
Yeah.
But they know what they know, but they don't know that bit that I know, right? So you might be talking to a CEO who's created a breakthrough medicine worth $1 billion, but if they don't know how to use Amazon to get that product to market,
Yeah.
then it's not going to work, right?
No.
So you don't have to know. You don't have to know what everybody knows. You just need to have a particular area that you love, that you're interested in, and that you can deliver, that is going to help people get from where they are to where they want to be. Yeah. And as long as you know that bit, then it's fine. So that took a lot of getting used to. But now I talk to senior people. If a celebrity was to walk in now, I would like to think I'd be able to just talk to them.
Yeah.
But that took a bit of getting used to, for sure.
Yeah, I bet. And I think I've kind of been on a similar journey. And there was a real standout moment for me. There was a guy that became a boss. He was I think he was like MD of a company that I work for, and we were going to a meeting one day, and it was in London, and he kind of lived on the way, so he said, "Look, you come pick me up." Pulled up, massive house, and I mean, like, this house was ridiculous. And I remember he got in the car, and I remember saying to him, "That's some house you got there," and he looked at me and he went, "Bricks and sand." And I was like, what does that mean? I was like, it's bricks and sand. He said, I can't take that with me, can I?
It's facts, isn't it?
Yeah. It's and I was like, I really kind of clung on to that. And I really had to think about what he meant. And over time, this was quite early in our relationship, but over time got to know this guy really well. And basically what he's saying is I'm just a bloke that's in a position to be able to afford a slightly bigger house than most normal people. But it means nothing. Like, I might have a bigger room. And that was really powerful. And that actually helped me, because I'd have this sort of thing, like you just mentioned about celebrity. You know, I remember meeting David Beckham.
That's big, to be fair.
It was big. I was on my 21st birthday, and I've always been quite a confident lad. He was in Waterstones in Southampton, and I froze. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I froze. And I think back to that time now, and I think he's just a guy. Like, he's all right. You know, I know he's a sporting legend and all the rest of it, but he's just a human. Do you know what I mean? Like, and now I'm being able to kind of separate that kind of the human element to what our perception of them is really important, to be able to actually communicate with people. So.
And to understand that you are enough, even if you're not them. That's a big part of it.
Yeah.
Because I think, you know, that's what we worry about in terms of our children, the compare and despair, you know, like with social media, you've got the opportunity to compare what you're doing to what other people are doing all the time. And you're always going to feel that you're under.
Yeah.
Aren't you?
Yeah.
So, just assuming that somebody said I've heard a few different quotes and ideas on this. Somebody said to me once that if you were to get round the table with 7 of your friends and family, and everybody was to put every problem they had on the table, most of you would take your own back, because the vast majority of people are dealing with stuff that you never know about and are carrying things that you'll never fully understand.
Yeah, true.
So working with that assumption, I think, helps with the pedestals that we put other people. Everyone's in the same bowl.
Yeah.
Everyone's winging it.
Yeah.
Everyone's trying their best. Everyone's trying to make themselves a little bit better each day, typically. And you can just trust in that. And really, your only comparison is you yesterday, and making sure that you can be friends with the man in the glass the majority of the time.
Yeah.
Not everyone can all the time.
No.
And that, you know, I heard a lovely quote recently on one of the podcasts where somebody said that their definition of success was turning up to meet your adult children and then being happy to see you.
Yeah, I saw that.
Or something along that line.
Yeah, I saw that.
It was like, all your children, your grown-up children wanting to spend time with you, or something like that. And I was like, well, yeah, he's right, isn't he?
Yeah,
because everything else is totally irrelevant.
Yeah, who cares?
Yeah. So I thought that was a nice success quote.
Yeah, absolutely. It's it's really interesting, isn't it? That the perception and how that changes as you get older.
Yes.
You know, and how, you know, we are just people.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? We're no different. No one's better. And, you know, and again, the same guy, the bricks and sand guy, standing in a room of, I don't know, 60 or 70 people, basically telling the room, he was a powerful guy. Like he was a big, tall, very well spoken. You know, you could tell he was you could tell he was successful, and he had, you know, this prowess around him that almost fearful. You know,
Yeah,
you didn't
quite
want to,
alpha,
you didn't want to upset this guy. But just being like, I'm the same as you. I've got 2 eyes, 2 arms, 2 legs. I'm a human. My door's open. Just come and talk to me. Like, even if you're just popping your head in to say, you know, how's it going? How's your day going? He was like, you know, and that, you know, dropping those barriers and being able to see someone for who they actually are. Again, as we spoke about earlier, you know, being able to understand a person, I think is massively important. And again, it just really helps with that kind of communication element, because you're not subconsciously worrying about what you're saying to this guy. You're not, I need to impress. You then become yourself. And 9 times out of 10, people like you for who you are. Do you know what I mean? When you get into a meaningful relationship, people want to meet you because of who they perceive you as. But actually, when you get down to the nitty gritty and you're in a one-on-one conversation, that kind of becomes irrelevant. The amount of people that I've spoken to that have gone, oh yeah, I met that guy and he's a bit of a knob. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, well, you know, that to me is like...
Fail.
Yeah, a complete fail. Like, you know, you got to be personable. And
a lot of it's ego.
Yeah, I agree.
A lot of it's ego, and it's doing things for other people rather than yourself, like we spoke about right at the start. Like, what ended up happening from a career jump point of view is I ended up, my wife still carries that on, but I've now got a full-time job and have been working at Fraser Dove, which is a life science talent consultancy, for almost 2 years. Having a good time, we're growing it. But when I made that decision, everyone thought I was mad. So when I look back at it, like when we said we were going to Australia, I had loads of friends and family telling me it's too far, it's too big, you're having a great time in London, why would you do that?
Yeah.
Then arrived in Australia, a couple of months in, resigned to take this MD role on. Everybody around me, why on earth are you doing that? That's crazy. Mm-hmm. This company have relocated you out, they know you, it's safe, it's secure, it's good. Yeah, why are you doing that? I was like, well, I just kind of, my internal compass is telling me this is where we go. What they really mean is, I couldn't do that. And so that's
true.
And they're projecting it. So you do that. Then 3.5 years into growing that business, we're coming home. Why are you coming home? That lifestyle you've got out there is incredible. Don't do that. Don't do that. You know? So then then all the external doubters are coming in again.
Yeah.
You then come back, you start a job, you say you're going to step back, but 18 months in, you get off the MD role, you take it on, they go, you said you didn't want to do that, why are you doing that? You don't want the stress. Just keep ticking along.
Yeah.
Yeah, just join in with the herd. Like, just keep ticking along. Then you end up getting made redundant out of that, and you go, I'm going all in this business. What do they say? Risky, mate.
Risky.
Risky. Why would anyone pay for help with interviewing? You can just get on YouTube. There's CV templates for free on Monster. No one's going to buy it. Right? Off you go. You go off and do that. You build something that only some people could dream of, and then you decide, actually, I'm going to now go and be a CCO of a talent consultancy. What does everyone say again? Why are you doing that?
Yeah.
And it's like, whoa, like it's wild how important it is to just have that internal locus of control and to just go from a compass point of view, I'm going to trust, and I might get it right, I might get it wrong, but I can live with failure. I can't live with what if, and I can't live with living for other people. We've got to find our own lane and lean into it and go for it. And I think that's an important message, because people will, throughout whatever your journey ends up being, as you're about to find out when you release your podcast, they're going to be doubting all over the place.
Yeah. It's really interesting, actually, because so many big decisions that you make, or certainly that I make, I embrace, you know, other people's opinions and reactions to what, you know, what would you think of this? I think you were actually the first person that I reached out to when I was thinking about starting this podcast. And
But you knew you were already going to do it.
Yeah, but that's the point.
You also knew I was the one guy you knew who would give you permission to go and do it.
Exactly.
And that's what I found with most coaching discussions, right? Like I'll sit down with somebody and you just go, oh, hi, good to meet you. Hey, Jay. Yeah, good. Quick question. What would you do if you weren't scared? And they go, well, I really want to go and do this. So do it then. Like most people are just looking for a bit of permission to actually put themselves first, go with that internal compass and go for it.
Yeah.
And that's fine because they're still leaning into who they are and what they're doing. But we know, mate, like we know.
Yeah.
You didn't need me to confirm that you setting up a podcast that you were going to love and that hopefully impacts a bunch of people and gives you another creative outlet that aligns with who you are as a good idea. You knew. You didn't need it.
Yeah.
It's so true though, isn't it?
Yeah, it's mad. And it's so interesting that, you know, despite all of these people giving you that, you know, I suppose it's incorrect advice, but it's probably not incorrect advice to them. It's you know, they
from a point of care.
Yeah, they genuinely think, oh my God, like, you know, are you mad? But as you rightly pointed out, you know, that's because that's what they would do. And, you know, you've got this kind of confidence in your own ability and your own drive and your own kind of awareness that I think this is going to work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I'm going to go down this route. And I think we've all got it. I think it's just that some people pay more attention to that than they do the people around them, and some people will pay more attention to the people around them. So
yeah, I agree.
Really interesting point. Really interesting.
Well, you're doing it right now, so fair play to you.
Thank you. Right, I've got some quick fire questions for you. What are the 3 things that you think have got you to where you are today?
Trusting that internal compass is a perfect lead on from what we've just described.
Yeah.
That's the number one for me. Trust the internal compass. You're not living life for anybody else. Mm-hmm. Go with it. It won't always work, but as I said, you can live with failure, but not with what if.
Yeah.
What if eats people up.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Eats people up. We see it.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people shared their what ifs to me when Career Jump was going well. Oh, I had this idea. I wanted to do this golf thing. I wanted to do it. It's like, I see you doing that. I'm like, oh, why didn't I do it?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, don't do that.
I live. I mean, a part of the reason I started this is because I've lived that.
Yeah.
I've gone through it. I've come up with ideas, not done anything about it, or dipped a toe.
Yeah.
And then backed out.
Yeah.
And then thought, man, if I'd have done that, I could be living a different
We've got
life
families. We've got responsibilities. We can't be reckless. But a dad holding what if inside is not going to be a present happy dad.
No.
So there's always a balance to be found here in terms of security versus fulfillment. Mm-hmm. That's the second point, which is chasing fulfillment rather than achievement. I think if you chase fulfillment rather than achievement, that the achievements will hopefully come with you as you go.
Kind of a point that I really drive into to my kids, especially Riley at the age that he's at.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to be, one thing he says to me, like, I'm going to be a millionaire. All right, great. You know, you've got that hunger, you've got that drive. Yeah, I just need to work out what I'm going to do. How do I make loads of money? Well, go and find out what you're passionate about. Because if you're passionate about something and you can make a career out of it, you're going to make money out of that because you're going to be amazing at it. So, yeah, totally agree with that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. And I think, you know, the other thing that I learned the hard way, but is very important, is to seek to understand rather than be understood.
To seek to understand rather than be understood.
So I think a lot of the time in the early days, I would go into meetings, business meetings, client meetings, that kind of thing, and try to impress them and try to get them to understand where I was coming from and try to convince them to do what I wanted them to do. Mm-hmm. Whereas actually the skill is to always go into with a viewpoint to trying to understand.
Yeah.
This is very good for conflict situations as well. I don't think I was very good at conflict in the early days, whereas now I feel far better equipped to deal with it because my starting point is to try and understand your view rather than prove you're wrong.
Yeah.
And you learn more that way. There's a curiosity to that. So I think that's quite a good little nugget for people to think about.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, totally agree with all 3 of them. What would you change if you could change anything about your journey? What would you change?
I think not being more focused and deliberate about my career, business and working life in my 20s and teens. Like, as I said before, I gave no importance to work. Like, I definitely could have invested more money in my 20s, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Instead of just blowing it. You think about how much you've earned and where it's all gone.
We've had a good time, though.
Good times, yeah. I'd like to say I remembered it, but I'm not sure. But yeah, so I think just being, I think there's a beautiful blend around that I would love to have had that I didn't, around living in the moment, but also, you know, thinking about the future a little bit more. I think vision drives decision, and I think a journeyless path is a slow one.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, if I'd have done in my 20s what I started doing in my 30s, by my age now at 42, who knows what other experiences I would have had, or what other platforms I'd be involved with, or what else I'd be doing. So yeah, I wouldn't say it's a regret as such, because there's no point, is there? But I certainly, if I could go back to being 22, what would I do differently? I'd be saving money. I'd be learning about different skills. I'd be doing, you know, planning my career and my opportunities a little bit more, and running more career experiments, you know, all of that stuff. I didn't do any of it.
Yeah. It's really interesting, actually, because the majority of people that I speak to say exactly the same thing. I just wish I started earlier.
Yeah.
I had a gap, you know, a 10-year gap, and we had this discussion earlier.
We're all there, aren't we?
I was exactly the same.
Like, travel more, right? Like, in your 20s.
Yeah.
I went on a holiday every year to an 1830s destination.
Brilliant.
Didn't go and see the world.
I remember doing one with you.
We did a few. Yeah, I mean, jeez. I mean, they were character building in many ways, but
yeah,
you see my point. Like, so £2,000 on 2 weeks in Kavos, or £2,000 on a month trekking around India, learning about.
Yeah, it's true.
Like, what were we doing?
What were we doing?
Morons. A Mac attack on a t-shirt written on the back. What are we doing? You know? Maybe that is just maturity, right? Maybe that is just growing up.
At the time, it felt right, didn't it?
Yeah, but it was, yeah. That's the thing. That's the thing. But equally, met some good people, had some good times. Used to laugh until my belly ached and tears were rolling down my face.
Got some great memories.
In amongst it somewhere, there's some memories. But yeah, I think we're all in the same boat on that one.
Nice. And what's next? What's next for you? Where are you going next?
Yeah, well, this Fraser Dove journey is really exciting. So we're rolling out globally. We've just opened out Miami. We've just opened out Switzerland. And we're trying to completely create a new category, make a dent on the world, and set up life science companies all over the world to have a better impact for patients. Our customers are developing the latest med tech, biotech, and medicines that are going to solve the world's health problems. Wow. And to be able to play a part of that is really, really fulfilling. So that's the big piece from that side. I've got a thought for another book in my mind as well, which is on the other side. So my original book was the Job Search Playbook, but I've got a thought of another book, which is like a talent Bible, which is more about how to deal with people in the new world of work. It's going to have an Old Testament, which was the old world of work, and then a New Testament, which is going to be about the new world of work. So
I like it.
I think there's another book, and then we'll see from there. It's
really interesting about kind of that fulfillment and that life science piece. You know, like, I'm guessing you're not directly involved in developing these medicines and stuff like that, but just being in the mix of it and just.
That's so inspiring, mate. Honestly, it's the most inspiring industry that I've operated in by quite a way. I've worked in financial service, you know, supplying financial services, or the big consumer brands, technology companies, all of that, all of which were cool, enjoyed at the time. But this is another level. I mean, I can't tell you some of the things that are going on in life sciences at the moment, and some of the things they're looking to solve, and knowing what that's going to mean to our children and our grandchildren's generations. Being able to play a tiny, tiny part and getting exposure to those people, going to those conferences. I travel a lot, as you know, and I'm out there meeting people all over the world who are trying to solve these health problems. It's such an awesome environment.
Yeah,
very
exciting.
cool.
Wow. Well, I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Obviously, you know, I hope from everyone's perspective that all this stuff develops and we can all live a much healthier and longer life.
Definitely.
So yeah, for sure. But mate, I really appreciate you coming on today. It's been an incredible conversation. You know, like, where we've known each other for so long, I didn't really know what we'd kind of get out, but I tell you what, I've learned so much about you today. It's unreal. It's
Likewise.
mad.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, mate.
No worries.
It's been
Cheers.
really good. Cheers.
Nice one.